he's the man who does his research. Look, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. I do really appreciate, on a number of levels, the work that Rotary do around the world and the contributions you do make to the communities around the world. So in this day and age where it's very much focused on III, members of Rotary do go their way to make sure that the community and their fellow members in the community looked after. I did have a career of speaking around the world for about 15 to 20 years, and then combined that with a change management approach to corporations. So I've gone into many companies and helped restructure organisations, get them back up and running. I guess that's what I sort of do with organisations like AAA and now with Sunflower House. I was interested when, I think it was Phil talking about how he got involved with the soccer. Well, my stepson many years ago, he, I'm one of the statistics who's had 2 marriages, but I'd always grown up playing rugby league and rugby union, and he was playing soccer when I got on the scene at about 6 years of age. So we'd go down. I was living in the Blue Mountains at the time, and we'd go down to Lithgow and places like that in the middle of winter, freezing cold, and these 6-year-olds would just follow the soccer ball around the ground, and then they score a goal about once every blue moon. So I pulled him aside one day and I said, "Look, Alan, every time you kick a goal, I'll give you $1. Now, for a 6-year-old, that should motivate you. So week after week, never got a goal. Then I went to him again one day. I said, "Isn't $1 enough to motivate you?" He used to call me Buffer. He said, "Buffer, do you understand? I'm a fullback. Fullbacks can't kick goals." I said, "In those circumstances, you had a pretty good game." The opportunity to get involved with Sunflower House was just sheer luck, to be honest. A friend of mine, Peter Keith, Dr. Peter Keith, who is also on the board at AAA with me, had been telling me about the dilemma that Sunflower House had in terms of One Door Mental Health, that many of you would know about, withdrew their services here around about April of 2018. Well, they made the announcement, and it was about 3 weeks after the federal government had given them $275,000 to support their non-NDIS members. I have a brother, unfortunately, who's had bipolar for the last 40 years, and my stepson, I just mentioned, Owen, who's now 27, has schizophrenia. So I'm pretty familiar with mental health, and it's sort of dear to my heart. And my father, who lives now in Horton, he rang me up one day and told me that Michael was in hospital again, and would I go over with him to see him. While we're over there, I heard one of the social workers talking with him, and they asked him about the NDIS, and he said, "I don't qualify for the NDIS." So when the social worker left, I said to him, "What do you mean you don't qualify for the NDIS?" He goes, I don't get it. They don't see me as a disabled person. Now, anybody who knows anything about mental health, they can look as fine as anything, but they're not functional. If my brother could sit here right now and would look just the same as I do, same as all of you, but if you go to his home, the mail's pouring out of his letterbox, you can't walk. I haven't been able to walk in his front door for 20 years for the amount of garbage and crap he's got there. And so he's not functional. He's not going to get a job, and he's not going to be able to take care of himself the way he should. So it was just serendipitous that 2 weeks later, Peter Keith came to me and said, "Look, there's this organisation, Sunflower House, who have just had the main coordinator, being One Door Mental Health, withdraw their services, and we've quickly incorporated Sunflower House to keep the service here for the community. But we have no idea about marketing. We need some help." So if it had asked me 2 weeks earlier, I would have said, "I just do not have the time." It was just the fact that only a couple of weeks before I'd visited my brother, and I thought, this is not right. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I told my wife I'm going down to the first board meeting under the new incorporation, and to help them out with marketing. I got home that night. She said, "Can you help me out with the marketing?" And I looked at her with a bit of an odd face and said, "I'm the president." And she said, "You're the what?" She said, "When are you going to do that between 3 a.m. and 6? And so I have to say, from the day I took it on, the first 12 months it was like 60, 70 hours a week of work to try and get the money back from one door that the grant had been given to. I won't go into the ethics of that side of the organisation, but it was a challenge, a very big challenge to get the money back. One of the things I did when I first got there was I asked to get all the members to come in and for me to have the opportunity to address them. And when I got there, I could see they were very fragile, they were very nervous about the future. One door had made an announcement that they're pulling out, so the perception was that service was no longer going to be there for them. So a lot of the members were very fragile about that, and without exaggerating, I've got Simone with me today, who's one of our members, and also one of our part-time employees now, and she would be able to reinforce my point about how much Sunflower House meant to these people. And so I said to them, look, you know, I think we can get it back on the track. It's going to take a little while, but I don't like losing, so if we go down, we won't go down without some punches. I then went back into another little room. I'd only been there probably a week and a half, 2 weeks, to do some stuff with the laptop on my lap. And one of our mental health workers came in and said, there's about 6 members out there crying. And I said, oh, really? Why? I was worried I'd said something to her. And she said, because you're the first person who's given them any hope in the last couple of years. At the end of that speech or that presentation I gave them, I did ask everybody if they could share with me what Sunflower House meant to them. And the comments were things like, this is my home, this is where my friends are, this is where I feel safe, I feel that I can be myself, I'm not judged. And I mean, that's very impactful dialogue. And that combined with the knowledge of my stepson and my brother, I found just too compelling, and I just felt I had to get involved. And I've been there pretty much ever since. So the challenges are, as you know, you hear a lot about money going into, and there are literally millions and billions of dollars going into mental health. The problem is, though, it goes predominantly into the clinical aspects of mental health. Your psychiatrists, your psychologists, your counsellors, and all those type of things. Very little gets through to what we call the psychosocial aspect of mental health. Now you have these people who are isolated, they don't feel comfortable out in the community, and therefore they end up being hermits. They don't get out there a lot. In addition to that, if you throw on top of that COVID-19 last year, and we had to shut down for about 3 months, it was a serious, precarious period of time where every member of the staff, we all took turns on ringing all the members every day. And one of the sad things that was a fallout of that is that the NDIS is what generates the money for most of these services to take place. The downside to that is that it's become pretty much a backyard punch-up to get the services. Now, we had a number of people who were represented by other organisations who never once phoned them in the middle of the pandemic, provided them no service, but they got billed every time. Right. So this is the problem. I then went to the NDIA and said, the problem with this setup is that you have there's 3 levels of it. You have what they call the plan manager. He basically, or she basically just pays the bills. Once the NDIA has assessed you and said this is how much you're going to have for your activities, that's the plan manager looks after that. The support coordinator then goes and finds the services for you, and that's where they spend the money. But what happens is this, for a lot of them, they also provide the service. So we started having people coming to us saying, I'm not allowed to come here anymore. Why? What do you mean? well, I haven't got enough money, they've got to spend the money elsewhere. Now the bottom line is this, it's their money. It's not the organisation that they're going through's money, it's them to provide the money. So we've had the battle of making sure that support coordinators are doing the right thing by their individuals. Now the problem is this, a lot of them have set up the services themselves. So when I spoke to the NDIA, they came back and said, I said, you can't, this is not right. The support coordinator is then getting the money and then they're putting all of the support services into their kitty. I said, that's a conflict of interest. To which they said, look, we've tried to sort it out and the problem is they just go and set up another business with a different ABN number and they skim the money like that. So it is unfortunately a dog-eat-dog plan out there. So what I made sure of is that we get a board that's got good, capable people who understand the mental health sector and who understand the services and the support that can be provided for Sunflower House. So going forward, we were fortunate enough, it was a hard slog, but we got just on $250,000 last year, about September, shared between the federal and the state government. They've made it very clear that at the end of the day, we have to become self-funded. And the only way we can do that is to generate enough income through the NDIS. So the money we got, if you looked at the business model, you wouldn't touch it in a million years. When you're in a not-for-profit organisation, it's not about how much money you put in the bank, it's about how much money you can put towards the service. So we have just recently, with the money that we had ourselves raised, as well as the money we got from the federal and state government, we have just employed at least 6 new staff members, one of which who is an NDIS expert from Currajong. And already we're starting to see the benefits of turning that around so we can look to moving on to the NDIS and making ourselves self-funded. The challenge though is, unfortunately, it's all good and well for us to find the money for those who are on the NDIS packages or those we can transition onto the NDIS packages. You've got to get them diagnosed. If you've got bipolar and schizophrenia, technically you should qualify. But then there are a lot of people out there with different mental health problems who aren't so easy to diagnose. They take time and it takes money to get them over the line. If you do get them over the line, then that's fine. The big problem though is we have at least 7 to 10 members who come in every week who are either over 65, which means you're no longer qualified. If you go on the NDIS, you've got to be on it before you're 65, otherwise you don't qualify. And so technically we're meant to be saying to these individuals, you can't come here anymore because we can't fund you. So my challenge now is to get out to the community and find community support services and sponsorships to be able to provide the funding to cater for these people. There's 65,000 people in this district and we've got about 62 members. So that tells you how many more people are out there dealing with mental health problems that aren't even getting the support. So that's going to be the challenge going forward. So the messages I'm trying to get out to everybody is that we're going to put packages together, 12-month packages for $3,000 to $5,000 that will go towards building the support we need for those members who will never get qualified for the NDIS. And that's our biggest challenge. And if I can get the community behind us and we can start to generate some of that money, I'm hoping to be able to use that as a tool to almost guilt the government to come to the party and put some money up. Because at the end of the day, and I was talking to, I think it was James earlier, or Phil, about the fact that this Rotary Club put so much money in to the early stages of Sunflower House, something like $40,000, and the benefit of that is that the people that need a place like Sunflower House have somewhere to go. It costs $1,112 per day for every day somebody's in the mental health ward, right? So if we can keep these people in the house and looked after, then we save the government a lot of money. In fact, when I was looking for the money initially, going around to the governments and so forth, I'd worked out that we had 6 members that collectively would have been a saving of nearly $700,000, because until they went into the Sunflower House, they'd been going back to hospital on a regular basis. Those seven or eight people that I just mentioned, since going to Sunflower House, have never gone back to hospital. And that's a significant saving to the country, but the benefit to our community is that these people are taken care of, because a lot of, you see these people on the news driving down Burke Street in Melbourne, running people over. They're not terrorists, they've got a mental health problem. I mean, who does that? Right? So they're all out there. I bet everyone in this room either has somebody or knows somebody who suffers with some level of mental health, whether it's anxiety or depression. I mean, it's just a debilitating condition, and we need to get on top of it, and the community needs to work as one to do it, because at the end of the day, if these people aren't looked after by places like Sunflower House, they're out on the streets. They're the ones breaking into shops and things. Not because they're bad, because some of it's been drug-induced over the years and it's damaged their brains, and some of them have just got a disposition for some form or other of mental health. So it's a community focus that we need to work on, and I guess since we got the money back in September, this is my first address out on the road, if you like, trying to share the word and look to you for any ideas or any thoughts about how we can tap into the community. And as I said, we're working on putting some packages together to now, and if we can share that across the community, it's not a big cost, as opposed to just 1 or 2 people. I mean, you guys have already done your hard lifting in that $40,000 all those years ago. So look, there's heaps more I could go on with, and but I won't. But I want to just simply say that we really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We've got some brochures here that you can take and share with your friends. We don't market to people with mental illness because most of them don't think they've got a problem. It's their families and their friends and so forth that we need to market to. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Yeah, Mark,
Okay, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Dr. Joe McGurr is a wonderful representative of our electorate. He has been by my side from day one. We've gone to the federal, we've gone to the state governments and everything, and he's our patron actually for Sunflower House. I'll just share quickly with you a story. You know, you're getting to know somebody pretty well when, while sitting in his office, we're waiting to go into a teleconference with the Minister for Mental Health of New South Wales, Bronwyn Taylor, to pitch the package I had to them. I pitched it as an investment, not as a grant. There was no grant, we just went in and pitched for it. And Simone's heard me swear before, so I'll swear. So we're sitting down, waiting on the line for Bronwyn to come onto the speaker. It's pretty hard to sell when you've not even met somebody, you're doing it over the phone, and I'll never forget this. Joe just looked at me and then he puts his face into his hands, then he looks up and he goes, "Fuck, it's hard, isn't it?" Because I know they've got no money. Because he used to, he was way up in the medical. He goes, "They've got no money." I said, "Joe, you have to understand something. Selling begins when they say no." He said, "Well, get ready, they're about to say no."
Selling begins when they
And we got 115 grand out of it.
Yeah, well done. 115 grand.
Thank you, Mark.